The Tennessee Titans get absolutely bullied by the Buffalo Bills, and for a second week in a row, the head coach deserves the most blame. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. The Tennessee Titans got started pretty well in this game, going to a 10-0 lead, but the wheels came off almost immediately with the Buffalo Bills scoring 34 straight points en route to a rout of a victory over the Tennessee Titans. We expected the Tennessee Titans to get beat pretty badly in this one, but the way that it happened, this team always finds a way to make it hurt. I'm going to break down the big loss. I'm going to talk about why the number one name on the blame list in this game for a second week in a row is Brian Callahan, who continues to look out of his depth when it comes to being a head coach in the NFL. Also, we got to talk about some of the Tennessee Titans' best players who simply have not been good enough. And all of you people crying for Mason Rudolph, well, that ain't going to answer anything either. Now, before we get into it, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. Make sure that you guys throw a thumbs up on the video, throw a tighten up down in the chat. We'll get through this thing together. But once again, if you want to know where to start the blame for this miserable, awful, terrible football team, it's Brian Callahan. And look, I'm not even going to do the thing where I say, oh, this is what people say in the comments. No, I am a Brian Callahan defender. I think that Brian Callahan has caught way too much heat for some of the just miserable things that have happened to the Titans so far this year, whether it be the quarterback, whether it be the special teams, different things. But, I mean, at this point, how can I sit up here and defend Brian Callahan whatsoever? What in the world was that fourth down call to open the second half? What in the world is Brian Callahan doing? What in the world was that call? It's 3rd and 1. You're on your side of the field. The defense has played incredible and held the Buffalo Bills to 0 for 5 on third downs. When your defense is playing like that, and your offense just got absolutely stuffed on 3rd and 1 to the point where you lose a yard, how in the world can you line up and go for it on 4th down, 4th and 2 for that matter, and then run it right up the gut again? Not like, it's twofold. Not only is the decision to go for it there absolutely foolish and insane, but the play call itself is absolutely terrible for what we just saw the play before. It's impossible to defend Brian Callahan. And look, I'm going to say this up front, throw it out there. I know a lot of you will disagree. That's your prerogative. I am not going to fire Brian Callahan after 6 games, or I'm not firing Brian Callahan after 1 season. The Titans don't need to be a joke like the Texans were for multiple years, cycling through head coaches on a 1-year basis. That is not what this team needs to do. But I will admit, and I will lay down for you guys on this one. If you're somebody who's in my comment section right now, or you're somebody online, or you're just a fan at home thinking to yourself, man, this guy is not a good head coach. The Titans have made a mistake. I am not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you that I agree, but I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, because right now it is completely fair to say that Brian Callahan is not a good head coach in the NFL. Now, it's his first 6 games as a head coach in the NFL. Obviously, like with young players, young coaches, there's going to be some growing pains. But I don't care how many games that you've coached, to go for it right there is insane. Last week, the play calling that we saw, insane. And let's talk about this too. Will Levis inactive? Will Levis, according to reports, may be out for 4 to 5 weeks. How in the world can Will Levis's injury be so bad that he's going to be out a month now, but yet you played him last week? The Titans should have won the game last week and would have won the game with Mason Rudolph. Now, because Mason Rudolph is any good, we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. Because all you people crying for Mason Rudolph, you got what you deserve today. But how in the world can this organization be so incompetent that they played Will Levis last week, and then now, after practicing for 2 days, full practice for 2 days, now he's limited, now he's out, and now he might be out a month? How does that sequence of events even make sense? The answer is a terrible organization that is cursed. The Titans are cursed, no doubt about it. I can't tell you why I think they're cursed, because all of you guys cry like babies, but it's pretty clear that it has to do with, I won't even get into it. But the incompetence of the organization to allow this Will Levis time of events and series of events play out is maybe the most disgusting thing of the weekend. So the guy could play in the game last week, but now he's so hurt that he might not play for a month. How did he play last week then? And he couldn't throw the ball downfield, and he was just getting rid of the ball within 2 seconds to make sure that he couldn't get hit. How is an organization so incompetent that the starting quarterback plays last week with the same injury that he has this week, and yet he's out for a month now? So going for it on 4th down, the second half just demise of, I have never seen a team in my life be so terrible in the second half of games, except maybe last year's Titans, who were also terrible in the second half of games, right? It's Groundhog Day, you know? So there's a lot of people to blame all the way up to the top. But at the end of the day, Brian Callahan is killing his football team right now. Brian Callahan is hurting his own football team with his stupid challenges, his piss-poor play calling, and then his decision-making, and it's hurtful. A lot of times, pain and sadness turns into anger for human beings. That's the way that we work. So I get that all of you are angry, and I'm angry too. But at the core of it, I'm just sad, man. I'm just sad that this team is as bad as it is. And sad that Will Levis isn't the quarterback. And sad that Brian Callahan may not be the head coach. And at the end of the day, we're all going to react with reasonable anger. But in reality, I'm just sad. Just sad about the whole situation. But it's more than the coach. It's more than the coach. The Titans' best players are just not worth the money right now. Appropriately, today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. What's something that scares you? I'm going to share a fear with you guys. It's that Brian Callahan was a terrible mistake for the Tennessee Titans. Look, it's Halloween time, so we like to have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies or ghosts? Therapy is a great tool to help you face your fears and find ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place. I've worked with BetterHelp, very good service. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, the Great American Story, A Land of Hope, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever, tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to get enrolled. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to get registered. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Titans fans, let's continue today's recap of the Tennessee Titans' embarrassment against the Buffalo Bills. Look, I admit it, I have defended Brian Callahan, but I'm not going to do that today. He looked in over his head. He made some terrible decisions. The Titans are getting smoked in the second half of these games, which is a halftime adjustment thing. The Titans have a plan in the first half. It works a little bit, doesn't work a little bit, and then the other team's coaches adjust at halftime, and then the Titans are a fish out of water. That means that the Titans coaches are not adjusting properly in the halftime period and going into the second half. It's a coaching thing. So Brian Callahan deserves his fair share of blame. He deserves the most blame. I wouldn't blame Brian Callahan for the first 3 games of the season. Obviously, the Titans win against Miami in the 4th game, but the last game against the Indianapolis Colts, this game against the Buffalo Bills, this is on Brian Callahan. He is hurting his team, but his players have to be better too. And the reality here is the Titans' most important players have not held up their end of the bargain this year. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed didn't play in this game. Guy never missed games with Kansas City. Had his worst game ever, and then immediately missed the game. But let's just say what it is. L'Jarius Sneed has not been worth the money so far this year. He hasn't played well. There we go. But let's continue and talk about somebody who was actually on the field for the Titans today. And it's Jeffery Simmons. Jeffery Simmons is my favorite player on the Titans. No doubt about it. He's been my favorite player on the Titans since Kevin Byard was traded. Okay? So I am a big Jeffery Simmons fan. But I am not going to, just like with Callahan, I am not going to get on here and tell you that Jeffery Simmons has been anything other than a massive disappointment this year. And maybe he'll blame the elbow injury, whatever. That's not good enough. If you're on the field, you're on the field. Jeffery Simmons has done nothing to affect the quarterback. Jeffery Simmons in this game didn't impact the run game very much either. Jeffery Simmons is a ghost. It's Halloween time, right? So that makes it slightly more funny. Ooh, yikes. Jeffery Simmons has been a major disappointment. And he's getting paid $100 million to do what? This team cannot pressure a quarterback to save its life. Everything good about this defense has been in the back end. The secondary has been covering their butts off for a lot of these games. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., the safeties, Roger McCreary, who continues to be great. But Harold Landry has 4 sacks now. I broke those sacks down on the Tic Tac Titans film channel. But Jeffery Simmons has been non-existent. And if you want to blame the injuries and say Jeff is hurt, Jeffery Simmons is always hurt. He's been hurt for 3 straight seasons now. Just not good enough. just not living up to the contract, just not worth the money. So the two highest paid players on the defensive side of the ball, not worth the money. And let's have this conversation too. And it sucks. It sucks. But the Jaguars fans were right. The Jags fans were right. Brian Thomas Jr. is better than Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley drops the ball nonstop. I mean, the one right before halftime where the Titans are throwing a million laterals like it's the end of the game, which, what are we doing? The Bills could pick up one of those balls and run it back. Crazy. But Calvin Ridley almost dropped that one too. Had two bad drops in this game, one on the end cut by Mason Rudolph in the fourth quarter, one on the sideline in the first half, I think it was. First half, maybe third quarter. Doesn't really matter. But the reality is the three highest paid players on the team, Jeffery Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed, and Calvin Ridley, have all not played well. You're never going to win doing that. You're never going to win that way. When your highest paid players are your biggest disappointments, you're never going to win that way. Ever. Ever. So the head coach, the starting quarterback, the three highest paid players on the team, all been terrible this year. They've all been terrible. The five most important people to this football team have been terrible. And that is how you go 1-5. That's how you go 1-5. I don't know what else to tell you other than that. I don't know what else to tell you. And let's do this now, because we'll talk about what happened with DeAndre Hopkins at the end of the game here in just a moment. Okay? For all of you people who said, oh, put in Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph needs to start. This team be a playoff team with Mason Rudolph. You don't know that Mason Rudolph can't take this team to the Super Bowl. You don't know that. Mason Rudolph is not good either. He's a good backup, but he's not a good starter. Mason Rudolph is not changing this team in any way. Did you watch what happened out there? He had 2 fumbles. Did he end up with 2 interceptions? No, just 1 interception, but he almost threw 2 other interceptions, one being a pick 6 that he threw right to a defensive lineman. We saw the best version of Mason Rudolph in this game. The best that Mason Rudolph can play was in this game. Mason Rudolph is not the answer. Mason Rudolph is not changing this football team. Mason Rudolph is a good backup. Mason Rudolph is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. So all of you people that have been crying for Mason Rudolph for a month, egg on your face. Grow up, Count Chocula, Peter Pan. Mason Rudolph isn't the answer. Like, what are we talking about? Being better than Will Levis? Okay, he's better than Will Levis. What does that do? Nothing. It does nothing. That's the point I've been making for weeks. So what? Mason Rudolph is better than Will Levis. Here's your lollipop. What's that gonna do? Nothing. It's going to do nothing. So, Mason Rudolph, not the answer. Will Levis, not the answer. Wake up. The starting quarterback that this team needs is not on the roster. They're not here. So, you could play Mason Rudolph the rest of the year. You can play Will Levis most of the year. It doesn't matter. This team sucks. It's not going to change anything. But what do we do from here? What happens? Well, it's time to trade DeAndre Hopkins, folks. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, Titans fans, you can keep the NFL season rolling with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets on FanDuel. It's an all-encompassing hub of football information. And right now, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I told you to bet the Buffalo Bills money line this week, or -8.5 or -1,000, whatever you wanted it to be. I told you. And now the Titans go to Detroit. So there's a good place to start with your first $5 bet too. Make sure that you check out America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel at FanDuel.com. Titans fans, a disaster, a blowout in Buffalo. It was awful. It was terrible. And again, the worst part about it is, if you've been a fan as long as I have, you know that the Titans find a way. The Titans find a way. Even though we all think the Titans are getting blown out, even though we all think that the Titans are going to lose, they find a way to pull us back in so that we can be mad and be upset once again. So crazy. So crazy. All right. So we blamed Brian Callahan because he's been a disaster the last 2 weeks. We talked about the Titans' best players, or most important players, we'll say, not getting it done. Jeffery, Simmons, Calvin Ridley, L'Jarius Sneed, Will Levis. Most important players on the team have all been awful. That's how you go 1-5. But what do the Titans do from here? What do the Titans do now? Well, number one, it starts with trading DeAndre Hopkins. And I saw a lot of people online asking what was going on, and they were talking about it on the broadcast on TV, watching the game. Why is DeAndre Hopkins not playing the last 2 drives? Why is he on the sideline without his helmet on, and then he puts his helmet on, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, duh, he's getting traded, and he can't get hurt. They couldn't allow DeAndre Hopkins to get hurt. Period. That's it. You want your answer? There it is. They couldn't allow DeAndre Hopkins to get hurt because they are about to trade him. The team is 1-5. They should trade anyone that they can. By the time that the Tennessee Titans are a good football team, none of these players that are on the team right now are likely going to matter except for the 2 last rookie classes. Period. Now, the problem is you can't trade some of these guys. Sneed, Ridley. They just got paid. They have too much guaranteed money. No team is taking that on. So that's not going to happen. But DeAndre Hopkins, his contract is out at the end of the year. Same thing with Simmons. He makes too much money. Too much guaranteed money left. He ain't going anywhere. But Quandre Diggs, Nick Folk, DeAndre Hopkins. It's time. Dylan Radins, another guy. It's time. Harold Landry even. I mean, that breaks my heart. I love Harold Landry. He's one of my favorites. Now I know that a 2-4 Jacksonville Jaguars team ain't laughing in the chat. You guys suck too. And the Colts, Anthony Richardson is terrible. So, hey, misery loves company. There you go. Smile a little bit. The Jags are a garbage football team, and they thought they were a playoff contender. Anthony Richardson is terrible, and the Colts spent a top 5 pick on him. So, there's that. But the reality is the Titans need to trade everybody that they can. It's time to throw everything off the boat. Period. It's over. It's absolutely over. So, trade Hopkins, trade everyone you can. And then when it comes to quarterback, you got to play Will Levis. It's the same thing. Is that a solution? No. But the solution isn't on the roster. The solution is not on the roster. The Titans do not have their quarterback of the future on the roster, and that sucks. It sucks to hear. It sucks to accept. It's disheartening. But you're right. Levis is not the answer. Rudolph is not the answer. There is no answer on the roster. It's the same thing as right tackle. It's the same thing as edge. So, trade everyone you can. Load up for the draft. get ready for a pick, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do. I mean, what else is there to do? You know, there's not much. The team is 1-5. It is over. And they're going to Detroit next week. My God. My God. They are going to get smoked by Detroit. Ha, man. Whew, man. But yeah, that's the answer. Trade every veteran that you possibly can. Play Will Levis and let him stink up the joint. And then go from there. Again, Jeffery Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed, Calvin Ridley, they have too much guaranteed money left on their contracts. You can't trade them. That's not going to happen during the season. Maybe if you want to do something like that after the season, you could do that. But you can't trade any of those guys during the year. They have too much guaranteed money left on their contracts. But anybody who doesn't, I would pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, baby. That's what I would be doing if I was Rand Carthon. You know, there's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do. The quarterbacks suck. The head coach is killing the team. The best players on the team are not playing worth their money. And that's where we're at. I wish I had something better to say. I know a lot of you guys want positivity. You tell them that I'm too negative, but the team is 1-5. What positivity do we have? Again, the only other positivity is Anthony Richardson is also not good, and Jacksonville is not a good football team either. So at least us and all our ugly cousins in the AFC South are just as ugly as each other. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. Make sure that you throw a thumbs up on the video, throw a tighten up down in the chat. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.